I can't believe you whizzed on my taco!
That's what she... Never mind. Let's do the video. You know, for whatever reason, my childhood home had a list of DVDs that are commonly regarded as some of the most maligned or box office bomb movies of the 90s and 2000s. Titan AE, the Tom and Jerry where they talk, Looney Tunes back in action. I've made videos on all of those already, in my underrated and overhated series, of which I suppose this is a new installment. I had no idea that any of those movies were so disliked because I was too busy watching them over and over again and solely using the internet for Neopets and DeviantArt. So when I became a real person and started telling people about my favorite things only to be met with laughter and looks of confusion and disgust, it was quite distressing. 2003's The Cat in the Hat is one of those films. It stars Mike Myers as a giant cat with a dad bod, a thick Brooklyn accent, and a penchant for the disturbing. I always thought this movie was a total romp. It was colorful and wacky, the special effects were fun, the jokes were over the top, but the general consensus is that this thing is a steaming pile of
super hydraulic instantaneous transporter.
So I watched it again. Then I watched it again. And again. And again. And again. And again. And again. Before he passed away, Dr. Seuss refused to sell the film rights to any of his books, but 7 years after his death, his widow, Audrey Geisel, decided to auction the film rights to How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Her conditions were steep. She strictly supervised production and held veto power over the script, objecting to lots of jokes and innuendos to maintain the integrity of his legacy of wholesome children's stories. His legacy certainly isn't so integritous now, with knowledge of the racist imagery in his books such as If I Ran the Zoo and his works for adults being more commonly known, but I digress. The final result of this first production was the 6th highest grossing film of the year 2000, making $345 million on a $123 million budget. I was only 5 years old, but I remember seeing it in theaters around Christmas time that year, like everyone else. So the precedent for the live-action Cat in the Hat was an incredibly financially successful family movie. The world waited to see what could come next. How could they top the Grinch? And then this happened.
Anything!
I'll get you, and I'll look like a bloody accident.
After this movie was released, Bill O'Reilly penned an article called The Trouble with the Cat in the Hat, without seeing the film, where he claimed that it played a part in coarsening the American child. Conservative types have been balking at anything that doesn't depict a nuclear family sitting still and smiling at each other since the dawn of media. But here's a thought. Kids have no idea what these quote-unquote inappropriate instances really are. And in most cases, kids will ignore what they don't know and simply continue enjoying the parts of the movie that they understand. And I think that if they already know enough to understand the joke, then it's not inappropriate. The sheltering and shielding of children's minds employed by some parents leaves them absolutely clueless as adults, with skewed, false, or incomplete ideas of the world. It's important that we allow children to be exposed to more than Cocomelon and Paw Patrol and Disney princesses. You might think I'm joking about Cocomelon, but I was in a hotel last week and it was on the giant TV in the breakfast area. That shit is bottom rung and it's everywhere, especially in the set it and forget it era of YouTube Kids replacing parental attention. Much of what is produced for children, especially these days, is an insult to their intelligence, preying on their parents' wallets with toy deals or both. And while some popular children's programming definitely has merit on its own, they shouldn't be their only source of entertainment. Kids should be allowed to see stuff that's weird and wacky and fantastical. Not everything they see has to spell out for them why sharing and loving your family is good. That's part of why I loved Turning Red so much, because it took the life lessons thing in a direction that appeals to many ages and comprehension levels while respecting the viewer's intelligence, tackling generational trauma and the confusing, overwhelming nature of adolescence with a metaphor. The Grinch was considered a successful family film as mentioned in that Bill O'Reilly article. I remember seeing it in theaters with my family. DreamWorks and Universal started production on The Cat in the Hat after The Grinch ended. In early production for The Cat in the Hat, Tim Allen was originally going to be the cat, which would have been an entirely different movie because the script was based on a version of the story informed by his childhood fear of the cat. A screenplay was commissioned in February 2001, and the original script was rewritten by a couple of the Seinfeld writers, the first draft being written by Eric Roth, who wrote Forrest Gump, among other things. By the time the script was ready, Tim Allen was committed to shooting The Santa Claus 2, so Mike Myers was given the role. Apparently, he was obligated to star in it because of a settlement related to a canceled movie based on one of his SNL sketches. Behind the scenes, sources have said that Mike Myers actually had a hand in directing his child actor co-stars. Hey, you know, Orbeez make eating fun, that's what they say in the ads. Hey, if you like cats, check out completely unrelated indie animated series The Incredible Adventures of Detective Cat, an independent animated series created by Charles Moss. The Incredible Adventures of Detective Cat takes place in the mysterious town of Crescent Moon City. Detective Cat and his friend Ashley Pooch embark on harrowing adventures from solving crime, searching for treasure, and paying the rent on time. Detective Cat really reminds me of the Tex Avery era, and earlier this year I saw Charles give a presentation on the series, so I'm really looking forward to it.
Indeed, you can't expect any less from Detective Cat.
I'm trying to do my part in each of my positive videos to promote an indie animated series and help uplift the medium of independent animation. So please take a minute and check out the first 5 minutes of Detective Cat here on YouTube. The link is in the description. The movie made a profit of about $30 million at the box office, beating out Looney Tunes Back in Action, and Elf, and Brother Bear. But Audrey Geisel was so offended by the final result of the film that she disallowed any more live-action Dr. Seuss movies from being produced. What were they expecting? The Cat in the Hat and How the Grinch Stole Christmas are not anything alike. The Grinch is about a curmudgeon becoming more connected with society. Of course it works well as a family movie, there's a lesson there. Meanwhile, The Cat in the Hat is about an eldritch feline wreaking havoc on 2 unsupervised children, then cleaning it all up and dipping right before their mom gets home. There's no clear family-friendly conclusion that you can draw there despite the big buckaroonies rolling in. So of course, the intended sequel, The Cat in the Hat Comes Back, was cancelled. Following the release of this movie, every subsequent adaptation of Dr. Seuss's books has been in animated form. And I think that's a shame, because juxtaposing normal-looking humans with the surreal environments and creatures of Dr. Seuss highlights the fantastical nature of his work in a way that animation can't because it's so congruous. I'm certainly not saying there's anything wrong with animated adaptations too. I was actually obsessed with Horton Hears a Who as a teenager, but I wish we still had both, because I think in general, the film industry is lacking weird-ass live-action kid stuff these days. What is it actually about? My videos are largely about writing, and I like to peel back perceptions of the thing and look at the facts. Wacky cat hijinks aside, this movie is about an existential threat. Childhood is fraught with fear. It's a peculiar stage of life where you are endowed with consciousness, willpower, and awareness, but stripped of true autonomy. Caught in a perpetual limbo, you're unable to exert control over what happens to you or what happens within your household. You are small, relatively defenseless, and often at the mercy of those larger and older than you. The world expects you to obey without questioning, to follow commands and conform to societal norms. This film's central themes of unsettling lack of control and looming threat of unpredictability snapshot the existential dread accompanying childhood. When we peel back the vibrant colors and textures of this film, it mirrors the reality that children face. They exist, but they don't control anything, not even really themselves. At the beginning of this movie, Conrad is at risk of being sent to military school by his mother's tyrannical boyfriend. Not husband, not father, just the neighbor she's dating. A complete life change just because he does typical 12-year-old boy stuff. And from what the viewer can tell, he's basically being raised by no one, given that his mother is always at work, babysitters are always quitting, and today's babysitter falls asleep on the couch watching TV 30 seconds after arriving. The entire plot of the movie is these 2 kids desperately trying to keep the house clean for a party that, if ruined, could cost their mother her job. They are utterly helpless against a cat-shaped whirlwind, dreading the inevitable consequences of the cat's presence. The Cat in the Hat is a horror movie in Seussian clothing. The pacing? Similar to a typical modern horror movie. Starts slow, mostly unassuming, stakes are set, inhabitants become aware of the paranormal activity as it begins to build. The situation is livable at first, but escalates to a point of being impossible to ignore until the entire family has to band together to eliminate the threat. What happens in this movie? Everything seems normal. The stakes are the kids have to keep the house clean for their mom. A large anthropomorphic cat appears, and at first, they have fun. But as his behavior escalates and becomes more and more out of control, Conrad's likelihood of remaining with his family dwindles, as well as their mother keeping her job. Their house gets sucked into an interdimensional vortex, and they have no choice but to fight tooth and nail to fix the situation. The Cat in the Hat has the plot structure of a horror movie. Not to mention the source of all these issues in the first place, the overworked single mother's job with intense social pressures and unreasonable demands, robbing her of time with her children in the name of making money selling real estate. What's scarier or more realistic these days than the looming threat of unemployment, lack of housing? Is the true monster of this movie capitalism? Alright, you can check that off your Kiki video essay bingo card. Download link below. The Cat in the Hat is a horror movie in undeniably gorgeous furnishings. Every set piece is an absolute feast for the eyes. They're incredibly colorful and fantastical. The costumes are delightfully saturated. The special effects are cartoonish and otherworldly. All of this eye candy, that's the part of the movie that I think is really for kids. The jokes? Clearly more directed at teenagers and adults. They aren't particularly complex, and they're at times offensive or in poor taste, but there's stuff in here that's so purely silly that it gets a real-life laugh out of me. Other times, it's simply just Mike Myers being so committed to the bit, so inherently disturbing in that suit with that laugh that I can't help but giggle. He carries the entire movie, playing to the other actors and to the camera, whether you cringe or scream or laugh at what he's doing. His acting is incredibly animated and expressive and makes the best out of being stuck in a prosthetic cat face and giant suit. I really do not know what the choice was with the "oh yes" throughout the movie though, it's pretty strange. About a week before filming started, several giant props were actually stolen from the set and vandalized. The outdoor scenes were filmed in a rural area near Simi Valley, California, where a fake neighborhood made of 24 52-foot-tall houses were raised. The downtown scenes were filmed on an actual street of shops in Pomona, California, and when filming ended, some of its imagery remained. However, according to the website Roadside America, it seems that all of the props and decorations are gone now, and the paint has faded. I imagine that this movie, too, has faded in most of your memories. A ghost whose distant image incites fear, derision, or at least a strong stank face. Today, on its 20th anniversary, I hope I made you think about it a little bit differently. There's not as much to defend here as the other movies in my underrated and overhated series or that childhood stack of DVDs, but I still do have a fun time watching this, and I think with some snacks and some friends who like to laugh, you could enjoy this as much as watching The Room or Twilight as comedies. It's outrageous and shocking and still a total romp. Thanks for watching.
I am the queen of the universe, the way it's tired. They engulf me in the water warm.
Can I ask you kind of a weird question?